So, hello everyone. I'm Avantika Kharade and I'll be your moderator for the day. I, on behalf of the team of the Amikus Qriae, welcomes you back for the second day on the certificate course on sports law, which is instructed by Professor Nishant Sheokand. There are few things that are to be followed during the session. No one is allowed to switch on the camera or mic during the whole session. And if anyone has any questions, please post it in the chat box. After this successful conduct of first day, we are back to the second day. And now I request our today's instructor, Professor Nishant, to take over and enlighten us on the topic of sports law.
Hello guys, how are you? I hope I'm audible and also visible at the same time. So I just like to start the session in 2 minutes. If you guys can, let's say, wait for 2 minutes, I'll come back and then we'll start. I'll just quickly wanted to say hi and then go. So someone is right there on the door, so I have to just deal with them and then I'll come back. So just quickly 2 minutes and I'll be back. Hi everybody. How are you? I hope you enjoyed my yesterday's session and are, let's say, motivated to equally participate in today's sessions also. So let's say before starting, I have a question for the moderators. So did we record yesterday's session also? Let's say I see that we are recording today's session. Can I just know quickly whether we recorded yesterday's session or not? Okay, perfect. So yesterday, few of you asked me for the reading material related to, let's say, the sporting contracts or the sports law. So I have the material today with me. So if, let's say, the moderators can give me the access to be a presenter, then maybe I can share the documents with you guys. But is it, let's say, possible for me to share the documents in the chat box? Let me just look through. Yes. Yeah. So I am sharing two particular contracts with you guys, which are a very interesting read. One is a contract of Angel Di Maria, Real Madrid and Manchester United. The deal between Real Madrid and Manchester United back then when Di Maria transferred to Manchester United. So this is that particular contract. So it is a beautiful read. Please go through it. And let's say afterwards, if you have any doubts or you wanna discuss this particular contract, we can discuss. And the other contract is of, it is from 2013, but it is also very interesting. It is for the player called Gareth Bale. It is a deal between, or it was a deal between Tottenham Hotspurs and Real Madrid. So back then in 2013, when Gareth Bale became the world's costliest player, and he moved to Real Madrid from Tottenham. So this contract deals with that particular deal. So I'm just quickly sharing these two documents. So they are on the way.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you in between. Sir, if you could WhatsApp me the same, the documents, I'll be forwarding the same to the group, to these two participants.
No, I've already shared it on the platform. I think they are there in the chat box. If you can click on them, I think everybody can click on them. So
Yes, sir, because all of them have not joined it, the participants. So those have not joined it, for them, we can share them in the group.
yeah,
That's why I was.
I'll share it afterwards also, and I'm going to share it here also. And
Yes, sir.
third document which I am sharing is by a lawyer called Joseph Vandelos. He practices in Spain. He has represented many players and also international federations. So it is a paper written by him about the transfers and how the rules apply to different or various transfers. So you are basically getting his interpretation of the rules and regulations which are prevalent. So yeah, currently I think yeah, now I can share. So yeah, it is also on the way. So you can just quickly. I think now you can see it in the chat box. Can you guys see it in the chat box? I am getting few answers. Let's say from Chitanshi and everything. Okay. Okay, so I'll do one thing. I'll share it with the moderators, and then maybe you can just, let's say, from there. So you won't be able to ask me questions on them. So let's do one thing. I'll share my email address here. So in case you guys have any doubts related to these documents, or let's say you want to discuss these documents, you can always email me. So N in Nishant is also, I think capitals does not matter, or the caps does not matter in the email. So it's Nishant Sheokand @ifim.edu.in. So in case, let's say related to the documents, you have any doubts, you can always write to me. I am like more than happy to answer your questions. And thank you so much, guys, for your overwhelming response yesterday. I received so many text messages on WhatsApp also, and also similarly on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for your response. And let's say it sort of motivates the presenter also. So I know in a way that whatever I was teaching, so it I was able to get through to you guys, or I was able to put forward my point to you guys. So do you guys remember at the end of yesterday's session, you guys gave me few suggestions of what you guys want to study today, or let's say what all topics you want me to cover. So there were few suggestions, for example, something related to cricket, or something related to doping or IPR or something like that. So before covering those topics, or let's say touching upon those topics, I started thinking, the area or the world of sports law is changing, and we have seen drastic changes, let's say from 1990 to 2021, or even after. We have seen so many changes. There are so many clubs, and all the federations, they are sort of evolving right after corona, because they had no choice but to evolve and to take certain measures, so that they would be able to, and they are able to cope up with the changing world that changed because of the corona. So on these lines, I wanted to start with one of the case studies which has impacted the, let's say, the footballing world from 1990s to the kind of sports law, or the kind of let's say the sporting world we are dealing with today. So before starting with that particular case, or that, let's say, with that particular case study, I just want to, let's say, sort of cover why sports law is changing, and why I want to talk about that particular case study today. So whenever we are talking about sports law, it is no longer about, for example, going to the court, representing your particular client, or resolving a particular dispute. It is no longer about just representing your client. It is not just about representing a particular club, or it is not just about dealing with the issues happening in a particular league. It is not just about, let's say, getting your trademark, getting your intellectual property right registered. It is not about, let's say, getting image rights. It is not just about, for example, resolving a issue between Messi and football club Barcelona. It has become transnational, it has become international, it has gone across borders, and a lots and lots and lots of changes are happening all around. By changes I mean, for example, there are so many big companies coming in, and they have started investing in, let's say, for example, in the footballing market. For example, Red Bull, I think 10-15 years back, Red Bull invested in a particular team, the team which was playing at the lowest level, and then they sort of visualize whether they would be able to, let's say, play in the highest or the topmost league in the world. And I think in the matter of 10 years, which was, let's say, we have never seen that sort of, yeah, exactly, Ashutosh, RP Leipzig, we have never seen that sort of a escalation of a particular team, of a very new team, which was able to reach the highest level, that to even Champions League. Or for example, Manchester City, when the Sheikhs, they sort of invested in a club like Manchester City, which at that time, back then, they were, the second best in their own city. They were struggling with football, they were struggling with results, and now they are one of the best clubs in the world. They are now one of the richest clubs in the world. So why, everything is happening around the world, or why everything is happening in and around football, that we have to understand. Or for example, yesterday I took an example of football club Chelsea. So whenever, let's say, we talk about football club Chelsea end up sacking their managers because they are not, let's say, sort of giving out results with the kind of money they are investing in the club. So why do Chelsea opt for, let's say, replacing a manager and not going for, let's say, replacing the whole squad? Or for example, in any other club also, why, for example, Lionel Messi wanted to leave football club Barcelona, or let's say why Real Madrid ended up sacking two managers in a particular season, or why Red Bull invested in RP Leipzig, or why Red Bull even came into the field of F1 racing. Now Red Bull is top two teams in F1 racing. So why, let's say, a sports drink is investing lots of money in the, let's say, the sporting clubs, or let's say, different sort of organizations, or F1 race, like for example, like F1 racing. So we have to understand, so in business, so we have to understand it from the perspective of business. Why I'm saying from the perspective of business, yesterday whatever I was teaching was purely on the basis of, let's say, sports law, or whatever we study today. So but now, let's say, sports law is not just about sporting contracts, or sports law is not just about a football player representing a particular club. Sports law is like, it has so many fields. For example, from the top of my head, we can talk about institutional framework of the sports, we can talk about sports governance, we can talk about Olympics, we can talk about history of Olympics, we can talk about WADA, we can talk about World Anti-Doping Agency, their statutes. Then we can talk about Court of Arbitration of Sports, history of, let's say, FIFA, or history of any other sport. So there are so many intricacies involved, and not just football, and not just, let's say, the contracts. For example, sports marketing, brands, intellectual property rights, like you guys were talking about, or media rights, marketing plan, agencies. So there are so many fields, not just limited to law, but at the end of the day, who is dealing with such intricacies involved in the industry of sports? Most of the times, us lawyers, we are taking care of, let's say, the media part of it, because law is involved in it. We are taking care of the contracts because law is involved in it. We are talking about, let's say, big data analysis. There also, the sports lawyers are involved. Then we are talking about transitional management, or we can, let's say, yeah, transitional management in sport. There also, us lawyers are involved. So how did we reach this particular stage, or how did we end up, let's say, with for example, football, how did we end up with, for example, UEFA? UEFA is a Champions League. It is also called as Champions League, where the top teams of different countries in Europe, they come together and then they play a league, and then they play for the, let's say, the highest trophy which is there in the footballing terms, for the clubs, for the club football. There is Club World Cup also, but when we talk about the, let's say, the kind of competition involved, then UEFA or the Champions League is the topmost. So how did Champions League involve, or how the football evolved when we talk about 21st century? So coming back to my example of, everything is related to business. So in business there is this principle, I want you guys to listen to me very carefully. So there's this principle called Kaizen. I'm going to post it in the chat box also. So it is called as Skyzen principle. So it is used by every, or all the, most of the companies around the world. It is basically, or when you, let's say, sort of translate it in English, it is known as continuous improvement. It is basically, you can say continuous improvement. And this principle is implemented by all the football clubs all around, or let's say all the sporting agencies all around. For example, whenever a club is in difficulty and is in process of change, what they're going to do is, for example, Chelsea, if they're facing difficulties with the results, what they'll do is they'll change the manager. They want to change the manager, or they want to continuously improve. So that is why they are changing the manager. It is not that, that manager is not capable of getting the results, but it is just that, the process is slow, or at that particular time, the combination of the manager and the particular club is not working properly. So they go for a positive change. They go for a sort of a change. Instead of changing the whole squad, they go for, let's say, we can change a one particular guy, and the cost involved in it is also less when we compare it to, let's say, changing a whole squad. So that is why a certain principle comes into play. It is used in business all around. It is a standard, let's say, the principle which is also, used all around the world, which is change for better. Let me just, like, please bear with me, just please understand, the basics, so we will be able to understand the kind of study I want to put forward today, or the kind of case I want to put forward today. So, whenever a particular club, or whenever, let's say, a particular sporting agency or a business is has to go under change, first what we have to do is, as, let's say, the people representing that particular club, we have to dare to ask, the kind of right questions, the right questions which are important to deal with a certain problem. What do I mean by a right question? For example, when a particular sheikh, he decided to invest in Manchester City, why was he investing in Manchester City and not any other club? You know, being a part of Manchester City, you have to ask these questions. Why that particular sheikh is investing in our club, which is in England and not even in his country. How we are going to, let's say, move forward. Their ideology would be different. As a club, your ideology would be different, because the football in England is understood in a very different manner when you compare it to any other country. When you compare, let's say, it to Spain, for example, there the football is understood in a very different manner. So you have to, ask all these questions. And why am I talking about, the Kaizen principles, or talking about asking these questions? Again, I'll take one more example. For example, Red Bull. Why a particular, you know soft drink company, or a energy drink company which is sort of related to sports or high octane sports, whenever you are playing a sport, if you see a Red Bull banner, you are going to go for a particular drink because it gives you energy, or it gives you wings, and etc etc, that's their motto. So then, why Red Bull decided to invest particularly in RP Leipzig and not any other club? So when we are, let's say, sitting with the representatives of the Red Bull, or when we are, let's say, sitting with the representatives of anyone, it is not that we are happy, we are getting the money, so everything is sorted. No, there would be so many let's say the problems which would arise in the future. Again, here I want to ask one question. So do you guys, or are you guys aware about a certain club in Italy which is known as Inter Milan? Have you guys heard the name of Inter Milan? Yes, exactly. So definitely. So yeah, thank you, Divyansh, Ashutosh. So do you guys know about Inter Milan? Inter Milan is a very traditional club, right? Do you guys agree with me that Inter Milan or AC Milan, they are a very traditional Italian clubs? So do you guys agree with me whether these clubs are very, let's say, traditional, old rivals, and very traditional in their nature? How the football is perceived in Italy. They are pretty stubborn. They are pretty, let's say, the defending in a particular league in Italy is pretty robust. They follow the old traditional methods. So, but now, can anyone tell me which company owns the Inter Milan? The Inter Milan, not the AC Milan. Which company owns the club, or which company has the substantial share? Yeah, exactly, Devansh. The owners of Inter Milan are the Chinese owner. So um, I'm trying to share my PPT here, but I'm not able to. So what I'll do is, instead of sharing my PPT, or let's say showing it to you guys, I'll just keep referring to my laptop, so that, and I'll also explain everything, so you won't feel the need of referring to my particular PPT. So when we are talking about Inter Milan, or when we are talking about their particular owners. So why do we, let's say, are concerned about the owners of Inter Milan? On one hand, till now, the Inter Milan has been a very traditional club, follows a certain sort of footballing practices in that particular club. Now just imagine a company from China coming to Italy and trying to invest in their particular group. Yeah, this is Sunning Holding Groups, and it is also the company which owns or owned Alibaba. I'm sure everybody must have heard about Alibaba. So this is the company which owns Alibaba also. So now, just imagine, the Sunning Group, they are the owners of Inter Milan. They acquired the particular club in 2016, for around 270 million euros. They started investing in that particular club. So the Chinese have certain way of doing the business, and on the other hand, the Italians have a different sort of a, let's say, approach to football. So when these two, let's say, companies or two stakeholders are coming together to build a traditional club and taking it forward, what do you guys think, how, let's say, the management would come out, or what do you guys think, how it would, whether it would be a good deal for the club in the future, or whether it would be a bad deal, or whether, you have to understand why Sunning is sort of, the company which has nothing to do with sports, the company which has nothing to do with football, why they're investing. So there, the motto of Sunning was to, market themselves in Europe, not just in China. So they wanted to spread, or they wanted to, further branch out. So they thought, investing in Inter Milan and then sort of taking it forward from there, and from the marketing purposes only. They did not get into the management part of it. They just wanted to market, they just wanted to get their name go ahead. So all of this, the cross border investment, the cross border of players going from one country to another, or let's say, one club buying a particular player from another continent or from another club. How is this possible today? Was it possible, let's say, in 1990, or was it possible back then, even before we were born? Or let's say, how the sporting world was being taken care of, or how people were able to invest, or why it was being done. So again, I'll take one more example here. So you guys, again, guys must have heard about Manchester City, and their rivals are Manchester United. So both these clubs are very well renowned in the world, but there is one major difference between them. Both have millions and millions of followers, both have millions and millions of fans, both have, let's say, the presence around the world. What Manchester United follows is they are able to succeed just on the basis of the results and also the kind of fan following they have. So they, follow one club approach, and they don't try to branch out. They just, are a fan based club. On the other hand, Manchester City, what they did was, they were not a very big club, but now they are. What they did was, they went to different sort of, very small leagues, and they bought different clubs there also. So now they have established, I think there are more than 10 clubs which are part of the City group. So what they did was, they went to Belgium. They bought a very small club for 2 million. Then they came to India also, Mumbai City FC. I guess, yeah, this is also owned by Manchester City. They came to India. They bought the club, and then they went to they went to US also. They are also New York City FC. I guess that is for Manchester City. So similarly, they have 12 clubs in the City group. So now, why do you think they are taking this particular approach? Why are they buying these, small football clubs and not the bigger clubs? So, there are so many, let's say, reasons behind it. One, they want to invest. Second, they wanted to increase their presence. How would they be able to increase their presence? By connecting, for example, when they are in Mumbai, they are able to connect with the small groups in and around Mumbai, in and around Maharashtra, and from there they are trying to branch out. They are getting in touch and also getting in deals with small businesses in India. Now they have so many stakeholders attached to Manchester City. That way they are able to spread their business, and that way they are also able to create fans. That way they are able to expand their market. But are Manchester United taking the same approach, or Red Bull taking the same approach? No. What Red Bull does is, Red Bull gives their name, they invest, and they are like, yeah, go and perform at the highest level and spread our name, spread Red Bull's name, so that we are able to sell more and more of the drinks. This is their motto. This is their motto, is just to, for example, Sunning, their motto is to expand, their motto is to market, and not when we compare them to Manchester United. Manchester United motto is to increase their fan base, earn revenue through football and not through marketing. So that way, now, after, let's say, covering all these, let's say, investments, and looking behind why a particular entity is investing into a particular club or into a particular league, then we have to think, or we have to think about why it is all possible today, why we have been able to, let's say, expand so much, why these companies are allowed to do it. So have you guys heard about a very major case which changed the scenario or the market of football transfers in the world? So there's this one case which happened, I guess, in 1990. It was the year even I wasn't born then. It was way before I was born. So there was this one major, very major case which happened and which changed the scenario of the world all around. No, not the Neymar case. Yeah, Neymar case two in 2017, but not Neymar's case. So have you guys heard about John Mark Bosman? I'm sure few of you must have heard about the famously known as Bosman case. Exactly, Jehan. So it is the Bosman case. So because of this particular case, everything changed in Europe, and everything also changed in and around the world because of this case. All the, let's say, there were few major changes which brought about, and because of this particular case, we what we are seeing today is the consequence of this particular case. So now I'll quickly go over the facts of this particular case. So there was this Belgian player, not very well renowned, or let's say when we compare him to other major or very famous players, he was not very famous, or he was not, let's say, the top. He was not there at the top level when we talk about in the footballing terms. Let's say he was not Ronaldo, or he was not Messi. So he was somewhere down there, somewhere in the middle. So he was playing for a Belgian club. I won't take the names, I won't confuse you guys. So just take it as he was playing for a Belgian club. He had a contract. So at the end of his contract, way back in 1990, the football players were not allowed to leave for free. So today, football players are allowed to leave for free once their contracts end. Once their contracts expire, they are allowed to leave to any other club for free. The the current club does not have a say in it. But back then, what was the rule was, if you have a contract with a certain club and your contract comes to an end, still you are not allowed to join a particular new club without the say so of your current club. The current club would or could ask for transfer money from the new club. So, for example, if Bosman wanted to leave to another club, they new club, even though he has no contract with the current club, still they would have to pay some money. So the same thing happened. So Bosman, at the end of his particular contract, he wanted to move to France. He wanted to move from Belgium to France. So in doing so, the Belgium club, which was the current or the ex club of Bosman, they wanted some sort of transfer money from the French club. And the club to which he wanted to move was a very small club, so they could not afford the transfer money. So they obviously denied. In this particular consequence of Bosman trying to move to France, what his current club, Belgian club, did was they reduced his wages to 75%. For example, if he was earning 100 rupees, so his wages were cut down to 25. So this is what happened. And also, so then obviously he went to the court. It was a very long battle. It was a 5 year old, like the battle in the court went on for 5 years. They sort of Bosman and his lawyers, wherever they went, no one was ready to even listen to Bosman's case. Everybody started deciding in the favor of Belgian club, because that was the established rule back then. So after 5 years, a judgment came out, and that particular judgment said that if Bosman or any other player in Europe wants to, in Europe, if that particular player wants to move or leave a particular club at the end of their contract, they can do so for free. So this was the judgment. So they could do so for free if their contract expires. Now the current club no longer had a say. The current club no longer had a say in the movement of the football player from one, let's say, one league to another in Europe, or from one club to another club in Europe. So what were the changes this particular, let's say, the judgment brought about? This, on the face of it, this judgment looks very simple. They were not allowed to leave, now they were allowed to leave for free. That is the face of it looks like, or this is the consequences we can think of. But this was not the only consequence of, let's say, this particular judgment. It had vast consequences. So as soon as this particular judgment came out, what happened was, now players were allowed to leave for free. So now you think, or connect it to the Lionel Messi example. If Messi is allowed to leave for free, would he be able to get, let's say, the kind of wages he wants to? Would he have the negotiation power with the club? Because new club does not have to pay 700 million. New club won't have to pay 700 million because Messi is allowed to leave for free. So Messi can ask for any sort of wages. Messi can negotiate for any sort of signing bonus. Messi can say, give me 50 million to sign for your club, and also give me 1 million per month or per week salary. Then only I'll play with you. And still, any club would agree to it. Why? Because the kind of investment or everything Messi would get, as discussed yesterday. So in this particular case, after Bosman case, this same similar thing happened, and the players started to negotiate with the new clubs. So there was a change in how the business started to happen throughout the Europe. This is how the shift was there, from it being, or from the negotiation power with the club, it shifted to the player. So when the negotiation power shifted from the club to the player, or it gave the origin to one major player in the industry. And can anyone guess which is that major player in the industry? So if the negotiation power is being shifted from the club to the player, it gave origin, or it gave, let's say, full power to another player, not the football player kind of, but another entity into the footballing world. Exactly, Ashutosh, the player agents, the agents. So because now negotiation power is with the football players, now the agents came into the picture. They started, negotiating on the behalf of the players, and the market started to shift. The kind of, money was being paid to the football players to play in various clubs. It started to increase. It was a positive change for the football players. But now, so one consequence I'll just write, which is it gave rise to the agents. Okay, so this is one change. And second is the negotiation power to the players. It gave rise to the, kind of money, or the high salaries were paid to the football players. So now there was also a very negative impact to it. Can anyone think of any negative impact to this particular judgment, or because of this particular judgment? So I'll tell you what was the negative impact. So now just imagine the scenario in 1995, 1996, where the clubs have started to pay huge amounts of signing bonuses, huge amount of money to the players. So the bigger clubs could afford. So now in this particular scenario, can the smaller clubs afford to give signing bonuses, or can they afford, or could they afford, to give high salaries? They could not. So it started to create that gap we see today. Today we see, for example, Barcelona, they are able to buy a player for 200 million. For example, Manchester City, they are able to buy a player for 100 million. For example, United, they are able to buy a player for 100 million, but other smaller clubs, they cannot buy. So can the smaller clubs compete at the same level with the bigger clubs? No, they cannot. In few cases, scenarios, where they are able to, let's say, bring the players from their particular, the team A's or the young squads, in those particular scenarios, they can sort of, compete, but academy players, but not in a, at the top level, not in every case. So that sort of, created a gap between, let's say, the top 5, top 6 clubs in the world, which we see today, and the smaller clubs, we started to, diminish. And these small clubs, they started to, let's say, invest into the smaller players, or they started to, go for the lesser known or the lesser talented players. So this was one of the impacts, which no one forecasted or no one assumed, but still, this created this particular kind of a change in the footballing industry. So because of this particular change, what happened was, so back then there was one more rule. So third change, or third impact of this particular, was the gap between big and small clubs. So here, these were the changes. So now, because of this change happening, so back then there was one rule. In the European leagues, for example, La Liga, for example, English Premier League, you could only field 3 plus 2 foreign players in your particular squad for a particular match day. So the rule was 3 plus 2. Three players who were not from the country in which the league is being played. For example, if you were playing in the English Premier League, you could only field 3 overseas players. For example, IPL also, they follow the same. In IPL, there are 4 players which can, overseas player who can play. So they had the same rule. Only 3 players could, 3 overseas player could play in a particular match for a particular team, and 2 overseas players you could play in your team if they came through your academy, or if they came through your second team. So that was the particular rule. But because of this Bosman ruling, what happened was, now this rule brought about changes. Why? So back in 1996, I remember in a match between Manchester United and Football Club Barcelona, it was a Champions League match. Back then, Ferguson, Alex Ferguson, who was the legendary manager of Manchester United, he had to bench their best player or their best keeper, Peter Schmeichel, and he had to go with an English keeper. Why? Because the rule was they could only play three overseas players. So result being they ended up losing 4-0 to Football Club Barcelona just because of this particular rule, because they had to bench Michael, because there were other three overseas players playing in Manchester United. So because of this particular rule, they ended up losing 4-0. Two big clubs competing at the topmost level, and they ended up being, out of that particular tournament. So after this particular judgment, what happened was they changed this particular rule, and then you could field as many overseas player you could. And why? Because there was a free movement of players now. A particular player can move from one national or one European country to another country, and they could easily field as many overseas players they could want. So that is why this also, so in 1999 again, Manchester United ended up playing Football Club Barcelona, and then they beat them because they had the kind of players they wanted to field on that particular day, because there was no nationality rule back then, and they were able to even win a particular treble. Treble means, they were able to win all the trophies or three trophies in a particular season, and they ended up beating Football Club Barcelona. So this particular judgment also brought about the emergence of Champions League trophy, or the Champions League we see it today. Why? Because Champions League is transnational. Champions League is where the players and the football teams and the clubs are playing each other in a particular league from different nations in Europe. So this particular judgment back then in 1990 to 1995, no one thought about, a small player could have such a huge impact on the world we see as today, the footballing world we see as today. So now just think, I don't know whether you guys are aware about this particular, let's say, the change the European Union or the UEFA or the FIFA is, trying to bring about. So I think the contract between the clubs in Europe and UEFA is for 2022, and afterwards they would have to renew the league. There is something sort of a clause. I think it's 2022 or 2024. So now what FIFA is doing, FIFA is proposing to scrap Champions League, and then they are giving a proposal for a World League. Now, just imagine they are giving a proposal for a world league where they don't want to follow the European system, where first you win your league and then you go to the Champions League. What they are proposing is, the top clubs from all the continents and also all the particular countries, they'll come together and they'll play that particular league. So now what would happen? Let's say if everybody agrees, all the big clubs agree, what would happen? Because all these entities are private, they can do whatever they want within the rules. They don't have to take permission from the particular nationalities or particular countries, because they are private leagues and they are not run by governments. So now they're proposing this particular super league or world league for football. Now just imagine, for example, they are giving two slots to every country, every big country, and India would also get two slots at least. Why? Can anyone tell me why India would get slots, although we don't have any big club when it comes to football, or when it comes to generating sorts of revenue? So still India would end up getting two slots in that particular super league. And for example, because of India, for example Chelsea, or for example Arsenal, or for example any other club, they would miss out on a slot in that World Super League. Exactly, Kavya. So looking at our population, looking at kind of revenue India would generate, Indian market or the Asian market would generate, So at the end of the day, it is all about investment. It is all about, why they want to come up with a super league, because they see the potential of generating so much of revenue, doubling the revenue, the kind of revenue, European tournaments are generating. And by going World Super League, they will be able to generate twice or thrice the revenue. How? In the current market, the Asian market is untapped. When we talk about the potential, when we talk about the kind of revenues, the Asian market, or let's say the Saudi Arabian markets, are untapped when it comes to the big football clubs, when it comes to the big footballing talents, or when it comes to the big investments. So now going back to, when I talked about change, when I talked about Kaizen, when I talked about why Sunning is investing into Italy and not in China, why Red Bull is investing, throughout different sports. So this is why they, because one, they are allowed to, second, they want to tap those markets where there is a scope of generating revenue. So now just think, when we, let's say, try and create a world super league, so now what do you think, or which club do you think would get, let's say, if we are talking about 6, 7, 8 top clubs in the world: Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United, Manchester City, Dortmund, Bayern, Juventus, Inter Milan, AC Milan. So I think these clubs would get the slots. So what about the other prominent but big clubs? Or what about the smaller clubs? For example, in England, there are so many small clubs. There is, for example, QPR, for example, Wolves. It is also a decent club. For example, any other club which is playing at the top level but is not able to generate those much of revenues, they would be playing in another league. They won't get a slot in World Super League. So now just think, would you, as a football fan, watch that particular league or not? Or would you watch World Super League? Would you watch, let's say, every week a particular big team, for example, Manchester United, every week playing City, every week playing Bayern, every week playing Real Madrid, Barcelona? So that kind of footballing talent, or would you watch, let's say, QPR every week playing with any other team from, let's say, Germany, from Italy, from Spain? Obviously, let's say, if you are a very, let's say, huge football fan, or even you have some knowledge, you would want to watch the bigger players. You would also want to watch bigger clubs. So what about the investment, or what about their revenues? What about the revenues of other clubs? What about the revenues of, let's say, Arsenal, which, or for example, what about the revenues of Chelsea, or for example, what about the revenues of Leicester City? Which these are clubs, they get a slot in Champions League if they are able to win. But in the World Super League, they won't get a chance because they are not playing in that particular league, and they are not at that level, or they don't have money behind them to allow them to play for a particular super league. So that is how I think the market of a particular sport works, or that is how us, or let's say these companies, are investing. And that is how I think everything is based upon Kaizen. Everything is about positive change. So there were few lobbying about by different clubs. Juventus wants to play in the World Super League, but not every other club wants to play. Other clubs are, again, definitely totally against this particular World Super League, because they don't want to shift, or they don't want to, hamper their current revenues. Because at the end of the day, it is all about generating revenues. So I think that is how, or that is very important for us sports lawyers to understand, how the market is operating right now, and how, or why everything is being done, why a particular investment is being done, why people from two different countries, why different companies are coming together and sort of creating a group, beautiful group. Manchester City, although I hate the club, but it is a very, let's say, successful business and footballing model on which they are able to establish a beautiful team. What they do is they exchange players from all the clubs. They are able to get the players from other nationalities or other jurisdictions, bypassing their laws. They are basically bypassing the laws by showing that every player plays under City group, so they are legally bind, or they can legally play for any of the clubs they want to. For example, Frank Lampard. If you're a sports fan, you must know, Frank Lampard went to New York City. I think it is New York City or like Melbourne City. I think it is one of the clubs. So he was playing there, but then on loan they sent Frank Lampard to Manchester City, and then he ended up scoring against his club, which was Chelsea. So yeah, that's how City Group is able to develop their football. That is how City Group is able to bypass the laws around or all over the world. So that is where our jobs as the lawyers comes into play, and that is how we have to understand today's market, and not just related to football but related to any of the sport. That is how at the end of the day it is all about money, and how we can bypass a certain system, or how we can follow a certain system and still are able to generate the most amount of revenue for your particular entity, be it your Lionel Messi's lawyer, or be it your football club Barcelona's lawyer. At the end of the day, it is all about asking the right questions, why, and also implementing the Kaizen principle. So that is why I wanted to cover this particular change and transitional management, and not, for example, IPR, or for example talk about doping or anything. So at this particular stage, do you guys have any questions for me? Because we are at the end of our particular course. Because I did not want to cover any other sport, or I did not want to cover any other topic. That wouldn't have made any sense. For example, yesterday we were talking about contracts, and today we would have talked about doping. So what about the other major fields of sports law? So I wanted to give you a general perception, how everything is connected in sports and sports law, and how you'll be able to, let's say, succeed in a particular field, or how you'll be able to answer the right questions or give the right answers to the questions, whichever field you decide to go to, be it dispute resolution, be it, let's say, media marketing, be it WADA, be it doping, or let's say if someone is thinking about going into doping. So it is very important, or it is very interesting topic I've been thinking about. So it has nothing to do with this particular course. I just want to put it out there. So what if all the sports players around the world are allowed to take, let's say, performance enhancing drugs? What if you make it legal? Then just try to imagine the kind of sporting abilities, or the kind of level you would get to see in sports. That would be very fascinating. And just imagine the kind of, let's say, the entertainment you would get. So just try and think on these lines also. So yeah, Kavya, I shared the documents, but most of you were not able to see the documents, or you were not able to, let's say, even see whether I shared those documents or not. What I'll do is, either you can write to me, I'll email it to you, or you can, let's say, I'll just share it with the Amicus Qriae Rubum, and they can, let's say, further share it with you guys. So this is as far as, let's say, about the documents. So do you guys have any other doubts? So I wanted to give you guys a particular, let's say, uh, if you guys want to do it, it is related to today's, whatever I covered today. So if you guys are interested, I want to give you an assignment. And what you can do is you can just share that particular, let's say, the answers of your assignments with me, or we can have a chat about it, or we can just connect over the email. So I want to share this particular question. It is very interesting. Think about it. So I'm posting it in the group. How do I reply to all? Yeah. So that is the particular question. I want you guys to just try to cover this particular question in 500, 600 words, and then share it with me. I'll try to, let's say, mark, or we can have a chat afterwards. If it makes sense, I shared my email also. I'll share it again. Share it with me after the course. We can always talk about it and have a discussion over it. So this question is related to today's discussion. And I have few questions here. Mother, impact of dietary supplements and other sports supplements in fair game play, and whether the sportsman should only be allowed to admission if they're. Yeah, so there are so many, let's say, the issues related to, if we allow the kind of performance enhancing drugs, and obviously someone mentioned that it would affect the sports athletes also, but I just wanted to, let's say, cull out these issues and then try to just assume a scenario, or try to assume a sporting world where it is allowed, where, Usain Bolt is running 100 meters in 5 seconds or 6 seconds or 7 seconds. So how fascinating would that be? Or for example, football player is able to run as fast as Usain Bolt and also able to deviate while running, and the kind of talent we would get to see, and then try to, let's say, relate it to the legal implications of it, and also try to find a way through which you can make it legal, the kind of argument you can put forward to make it legal. So Jehan is saying sport has to be played by skill. If you use performance enhancing drugs, the whole aspect of sporting spirit is out of the window. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not saying that there are like ethics, like it is way beyond ethics and everything. I'm just saying try to assume a certain scenario, then try to. And also, if you, let's say, everybody is using performance enhancing drugs, would it make any difference? Let's say if everybody, though, I think the results would be same, or it would change. You never know, but it would be very interesting to know, or let's say, get into this particular area. So bigger clubs like Manchester City would be able to buy the best of drugs while small teams would be left behind. So yeah, again, now you guys are thinking. Now I like what Esteban. I think this is your pronunciation, right? Esteban. Yeah. So whatever Esteban has posted, it is like that's how I want you guys to think on these lines. Being lawyers, that is how you'll be able to visualize the kind of problems you guys have. So I'll quickly share something related to this particular topic, which is you have to visualize everything in being a lawyer, and not just a sports lawyer, but being any lawyer, because there are so many Nobel laureates also who are saying now around the world that after a point of time there won't be a need of a lawyer in the world. They are saying the lawyers won't be required in the world, or let's say the kind of education we are going through today, we won't even be able to deal with the problems in the world. So there's this particular AI which is called as Sweetie. So go back and research on Sweetie, and then try and let's say, evaluate the kind of problems Sweetie is putting forward in the world for, let's say, the 21st century lawyers or the Generation Z lawyers. So now I have a few questions here. What about, everyone would react differently to the drugs? Yeah, exactly. What about recreational drugs? Should players be penalized for using recreational drugs? So yeah, it is there. Players are penalized if you are not legally bound, or if, let's say, there is no legal justification behind you using recreational drugs. You are penalized. You are banned for a few years, or in some cases banned for life also, if you are using certain kind of drugs. Yeah, that is there. I'm not let's say, not arguing or disputing this particular fact. There are so many implications related to it. I'm just saying, in a world where these complications are not there, and then try to imagine a sort of sporting world. So yeah, Avantika has a particular question. So yeah, I'll sort of try to cover that particular question. So Avantika is saying that, could you just brief on the career option in sports law for law graduates and students? So it all depends, which kind of field you want to get into. Sports law is not like, it has different career options when it is compared to other law fields. It has same, let's say if you want to become a sports lawyer, as a criminal lawyer, you also have the option of litigating. As any other lawyer, you have the option to, going into a law firm and becoming an associate and then partner and then sort of becoming a corporate lawyer. So similarly, as a sports lawyer, you have those options also. You can get into academia, or you can go and join, let's say, any international agency, for example FIFA. You can join Indian Olympic Committee, or let's say you can join any of the IPL clubs. You can represent them, or you can join any of the leagues. There are so many leagues in India coming up. You can join FIFA, you can join BCCI, you can join ICC. You can be there, legal counsel. You can represent them legally. Or the beauty of becoming a sports lawyer is that you can always get into management part of it, because like I think, like from sports, like from other aspects of the law, sports law is a bit different when it comes to management part of it. You have to understand the sport, and you have to understand how, what are the legal implications of it, and then you can sort of take it forward. Because in sports law, it is never just about sports, or it is never just about the legal aspects. It is also, like I told you, for example Sunning Group, for example City, for example any of the groups, the management part of it is there. So that is why you should keep in mind that you have to be or understand the management part of a particular company, particular agency, and then sort of try to gain those, let's say, skills which are required for you to become a sports lawyer. Like I told you guys yesterday, there are so many, it is a combination of so many laws. You need to know so many laws. But let's say you want to become a sports lawyer who deals with football, who deals with transfers, football transfers. So RTSP, RTPSP, there are so many regulations which deal with such kind of regulations. So there are transfer regulations for football. In this scenario, what would happen, whether you are a minor or not. In the case you are a minor, this particular section would apply to this particular situation. Then there is World Anti-Doping Agency, and they have their own charter, they have their own code. So you have to study those codes if you, let's say, you want to get into sports. So that is why I was at the start of today's lecture, I was talking about, there are so many different let's say fields of sports. Like I told you, like sports marketing, like there is, it deals with media rights. Then there is financing in sports. Then you have to deal with, let's say, IPR issues, for example ambush marketing. Then you have to deal with big data analysis. Then there is the topic today we had, transactional management. Then management skills of a lawyer, financial accounting, financial directions of the club, income management, image rights, corporate financing of the clubs. So there are so many. Then there is comes dispute resolution. So dispute resolution, as you guys must know, that it is very important in today's world, not in just in sports, but in sports also. So if you want to become a, let's say, dispute resolution lawyer, you definitely should read about the charter and the regulations related to Court of Arbitration of Sports. I'll post it what it is. It is CAS. So let's say you want to get into dispute resolution, you should definitely read up on CAS. You should definitely read about the regulations of it. And so there are so many fields. If you want a detailed, let's say, lecture on it, or we can always schedule one more. Or let's say if you want to talk about something specific, then we can talk about. There are so many lawyers. So there is this lawyer, Alejandra Salmeron. So she deals with disciplinary issues in sports, or she deals with the transfers of minors. That's it. She deals with the transfers of minors who are under 18. Because there are so many disputes and there are so many regulations related to the minors transfers in football. Then you can become an employment contract lawyer, or you can, let's say, get into where you are talking about FIF Pro is the agency which takes care of the labor rights of the football players. You can represent such agencies. Or then you can become anti-doping lawyer or doping lawyer. Or let's say if you want to talk about, someone who was talking about ethics, then you can become a integrity, or let's say sports integrity lawyer. You can just deal with such issues. When it comes to, let's say, management part of it, you can get into organization of a sports event. There's so many things to take care of, from planning to organizing to implementation of it, then the post implementation of a particular sporting league or a sport event. So there are so many things. See, nowadays everything is shifting to AI, everything is shifting to digital. Now you are getting a pre-game experience that it was not there 5 years back. You get everything in 3D, you get everything in that particular whatever it is called. You put on the goggles and it is like the real world experience. Then there are human resources, finances and management, organization of, so there are so many things. Then there is IP in sports. So there are so many areas. And one of the biggest, you know not war, I'm not talking about war. So now there is one of the very, let's say, upcoming areas in sports, which is esports. So you should definitely look into esports. Esports is playing a very major role and is also generating huge revenues when it comes to money. And nowadays we consider those sports as sports. For example, when you are playing FIFA, or let's say you are playing Dota, so nowadays there is so much of money involved. FIFA organizes a competition, a world league and a world cup and everything. You get lots of prize money is there, 5 million, 6 million prize money just to win a video game. So now then you look at the kind of money which is involved. They are getting professional contracts. Now see, most of the players who are playing are underage. Can underage players, or can an underage person get into a contract? Is that contract void or voidable, or let's say valid? Who would come into the scenario, and who would deal with such issues? Us, the lawyers, for which we have to know the contractual law of India, and not just esports, or not just the regulations related to esports. So there is a huge margin, I would say, or huge scope in the field of sports law in general. So Kaveh is saying, did you mean fantasy sports? So fantasy sports is also a part of it, but I don't know, can we call it a sport? So now there is one very prominent app called as Dream 11. I'm assuming that you guys know about Dream 11. It deals with, you have to make your team, and then if your fantasy team is winning, then you earn real money out of it. So now, recently issue was raised saying whether, it amounts to gambling, or is it let's say, a game of sport? Whether Dream 11 is a game of sport, a game of skill, or whether it is gambling. Game of skill or gambling. So now, yesterday, do you guys remember I talked about what is a sport or what is a game, or how do you ascertain, something, whether it is a just for entertainment, or whether it requires, or whether it is a game. You look at the kind of game it is, and then you ascertain whether skill is required or not. So the case of Dream 11 went to the High Court. I think it was Mumbai High Court, and then they gave out the decision, and then they said, it is a game of skill and not gambling. You are not just purely gambling your money and just waiting for the result. They said, there is some skill required, there is some prerequisite knowledge of cricket required, and then on the basis of those skills you have, or the knowledge you have, you are going to make your fantasy team, and then you are earning money, and it is not just pure gambling. Now it is, I think the case is pending in front of Supreme Court. I think, like, in my personal opinion, it can go either way, because when you say it is a game of skill, I agree that it is a game of skill. You need to know who is a better keeper, who is a better bowler, you need to know who's a better batsman, and then you look at, let's say, the kind of pitch they are playing that particular IPL match on, or let's say, what are the weather conditions, which team is playing first, which team is playing second. These are the criterias. But then still, I think I've also tried my hand at Dream 11. I was always able to get even, that's it, break even, and I never earned any money. Maybe because of luck, or maybe I was not, or I don't have, let's say, the requisite skill required to win at Dream 11. But I think it is also a bit about luck in Dream 11, because you don't know which player is going to perform on a particular day, which player is going to, let's say, sometimes they end up getting run out, they end up getting, let's say, some other player is performing so well, they end up catching them on the boundary, and they are able to sort of pull a very good catch. So even though a particular players were performing, he was your captain in Dream 11, still out of, because of luck or because of, let's say, their bad day, they were not able to perform, and you end up losing your money in Dream 11. So then it is our job, or our job as lawyers or sports lawyers, to convince the court and the judges to go or decide either way, whether it is gambling or whether it is a game of skill and it is not gambling. So that is how you ascertain. Can you tell us? Yeah, I'll send you the case brief also, and don't worry about that, Ashutosh. So now Kavya has one more question. Poker, although being illegal, but online poker is being played freely. What is your take on that? Yeah, so like, yeah, again, it depends. No, where is the intermediary which is hosting that particular game, where's the server, which country they are in, whether we are able to play from an Indian server or not, whether, let's say, it is allowed in that particular state or not, because there are few states which allow gambling. For example, Kolkata, or not Kolkata, in West Bengal, I think in few areas the gambling on horse races is legal, but not everywhere. If you try to, let's say, gamble in Haryana, it is not legal, it is illegal. So also it depends, so there is one line where you draw. For example, 10th June, in case of Lionel Messi, just an arbitrary or a particular reference line, it can fall on the other side also, it can fall here also. So it is our job as, let's say, Kavya's or Ashutosh's or Jehan's or Esteban's job to convince or to change that particular scenario, saying, no boss, Dream 11 is a game of skill, and we won't let it, let's say, get banned. Or the other person who does not like cricket, they can always argue, see, this is gambling and I hate gambling, and you should definitely ban this particular Dream 11 app in India. So that's how I think you ascertain in the field of law, or let's say, whenever we have to understand from on these lines, whether, for example, Dream 11. So we have to ascertain what is sport, what is a game, what is skill, what are the ingredients, or what is that blanket definition we can apply on a particular thing to ascertain whether it is legal or whether it is illegal. So at this point, do you guys have any question, or we can wrap up this particular certificate course? So I've given you one question. I think like it is there in the chat box. Yeah, it is there. So what you would do is, it is not mandatory, obviously, for you guys. So if you wanna, let's say, write on it, you can write on it, email it to me, and we can have a chat about it. I won't be able to, let's say, grade your paper, but we can chat about it, or we can have a discussion over it. So now Sohail has a question, that is there any coded law for sports? No, there is no any, let's say, one code, like for example IPC, or let's say Contract Act on sports. It deals with different areas. For example, when you're talking about doping, there is World Anti-Doping Agency, and then they have their code. And then, let's say, when we are talking about Olympics, then they have their own Olympic charter which governs everything. When we talk about football, FIFA has given out their regulations. Then there is UEFA. UEFA has then given their charter, and then similarly ICC. It is there for all the sports. So that is how you have to go sport by sport. You can deal with different sports also, but being a sports lawyer, you have to choose which area you want to go into, and it cannot be general. I think I've answered your question, Sohail. So yeah. So it depends on the jurisdiction, Farhan. To answer your question, it depends on the jurisdiction you are in. So in India, so there are few scenarios, there are few exceptions given. Let's say if a contract is in the favor of the minor, then it is valid. If it is going against the interest of the minor, then it end up being the void or void ab initio. So yeah. I think the moderators want me to end the session now. They have switched on their video also. So, Jehan, the question is there in the chat box. If you go up, you'll be able to find that particular question. I think I'll again post it here for you guys. So now this is the question. I just posted in the chat box, and you can email me on this particular email. So guys, I hope I was able to, let's say, put forward whatever I wanted to uh, sort of cover on these particular 2 days. And also I was able to, let's say, catch your interest, and also I was able to make you understand or give you a brief about sports law, because sports law is pretty vast. whatever I have covered, it is, let's say, I think 0.00001% of sports law. And we can always, if let's say our organizers want in future also, we can always conduct such workshops or certificate courses. Or let's say we can just, you have my personal details, we can always talk on the phone or through the email. I won't talk more now up to the moderators.
Thank you so much, sir, for today's session. Now I request Sanjana to render the vote of thanks.
The Amikus Qriae family is really obliged to have you, sir, here with us and spending your valuable time with the budding lawyers and professionals. And I also thank you for sparing your valuable time and engaging us and the law students with a very new topic, sports law and the way forward. We are really honored to get an understanding with your experiences and thoughtful ideas. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the entire team of Amikus Qriae for holding up this 2-day certificate course in such a beautiful manner and that it ended successfully. Last but not the least, thank you, sir, for your valuable time today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
People can devote the platform right now.